Have you ever questioned the story of creation you were taught as a child? What if everything you believed about the beginning of the world was only part of the truth, a carefully constructed narrative that hides a deeper, forgotten reality? For centuries, the dominant versions of creation have been repeated in schools, churches, and textbooks, shaping the way humanity perceives itself, the cosmos, and even the divine. Yet Gnostic thinkers, philosophers like Jonas, and other esoteric traditions suggest that what we were told is a simplified, distorted account, one that obscures the mysteries of existence and the true forces that govern life. Imagine that the story you hold as absolute could actually be a veil, concealing knowledge that has been intentionally hidden from most people. Today, we will explore what lies behind that veil, the secrets that were almost erased from history, and why uncovering them could change the way you see the world and yourself forever. Some scholars believe that the traditional creation story was designed not only to explain the cosmos, but also to shape human behavior and understanding in ways that kept certain truths invisible. Jonas, one of the leading interpreters of Gnostic thought, argued that the ancient Gnostics recognized a world far more complex than the simple narratives we inherited. He revealed that creation, as depicted in these texts, is intertwined with hidden forces, demiurges, and layers of consciousness that modern readers rarely encounter. By the end of this video, you may begin to see the creation story not as a fixed tale, but as a window into hidden knowledge, a story that masks profound truths about existence, the divine, and humanity itself. As we dive into this investigation, ask yourself, how much of what you know is shaped by repetition, tradition, or authority? How many truths have been obscured, varied, or even deliberately hidden? By questioning the narrative, you are taking the first step toward uncovering secrets that have remained invisible for millennia. If you are ready to explore these hidden layers, to see the creation story in a completely new light, subscribe to our channel and join us as we reveal more of these ancient mysteries, piece by piece, just as Jonas and the Gnostics intended. For centuries, the creation story that most people learned was presented as simple and absolute. Yet Gnostic texts reveal a far more complex picture, one in which the world we inhabit was shaped not solely by a benevolent divine hand, but through a series of hidden forces and layered realities. Jonas, a philosopher who dedicated his life to studying Gnostic thought, argued that the orthodox narratives were simplified and structured to obscure certain truths, masking the presence of intermediary powers, sometimes called demiurges, who shaped the material world according to their own designs. Some scholars believe that the Gnostics saw creation not as an act of immediate perfection, but as a process entwined with both ignorance and intentional concealment. In other words, the world we perceive is only a fragment of a much larger, hidden spiritual reality, and the story we were told masks the layers of knowledge that were once available to initiates and seekers. The Nag Hammadi texts, discovered in Egypt in 1945, provide striking evidence of this alternative view. These manuscripts describe a cosmos in which a higher, unknowable divine fullness exists beyond the material universe, while lesser beings, the archons or demiurges, shape the physical world without awareness of this ultimate source. The creation story, as retold by mainstream traditions, omits these layers entirely, presenting the material universe as a direct reflection of divine intent. Yet, according to Gnostic interpretation, this is misleading. The material world carries imperfection because it was crafted by beings with limited understanding, reflecting only a shadow of the true divine. By teaching humans a simplified creation, the orthodox narrative inadvertently, or perhaps deliberately, hid the path to gnosis, the inner knowledge that allows humans to recognize the divine spark within themselves and the cosmos. Symbols embedded in Gnostic texts provide further insight. Creation is often depicted as a series of emanations, a cascading flow from the highest divine source down through intermediary beings before reaching the material realm. Each layer carries both light and shadow, knowledge, and ignorance, revealing that the cosmos is structured not as a simple hierarchy, but as a labyrinth of consciousness. Hans Jonas emphasized that these symbols were not myths to be taken literally, but encoded wisdom, guiding seekers toward understanding the deeper reality behind the world they see. For the uninitiated, these complexities remained hidden. For those who pursued gnosis, they offered a roadmap to spiritual liberation. The distortion of creation stories also reflects the exercise of power. By controlling the narrative of origins, religious institutions established authority over human understanding, shaping not only belief but behavior. The Gnostics believed that true spiritual insight could not be dictated or imposed. It had to be discovered internally. By suppressing texts, banning heretical teachings, and enforcing orthodox narratives, institutions effectively blocked access to these profound truths, keeping the majority of humanity unaware of the forces that influence existence. As a result, the story you learned in school or church is only a fraction of a much larger, hidden tapestry, one that requires questioning and exploration to fully perceive. Even today, the impact of this distortion is evident. When we accept creation stories at face value, we may unconsciously limit our understanding of the cosmos, of our place in it, and of the divine itself. Yet the Gnostics offer hope. By studying these hidden teachings, we can begin to pierce the veil, recognizing that the world is layered with unseen dimensions, and that the forces behind creation are more complex than any single narrative can capture. Ask yourself now, have you ever felt that something in the story of creation doesn't fully make sense? That there is a hidden depth you were never taught to see? This is precisely what Hans Jonas and the ancient Gnostics intended for seekers to discover. The Gnostic worldview presents a creation far more intricate than the familiar narrative passed down by orthodox traditions. According to these texts, the world we inhabit was not the immediate expression of a perfect, singular divine being, but the result of multiple layers of emanation, filtered through beings with limited knowledge or awareness. The Apocryphon of John, one of the most influential Gnostic manuscripts, reveals that a higher, unknowable God exists beyond our perception, while a subordinate entity, the demiurge, shapes the material universe. This demiurge is neither wholly malevolent nor fully benevolent. It acts from ignorance, imposing structure on the cosmos without understanding the fullness of the divine. Hans Jonas interpreted this as a radical rethinking of creation. The imperfections of the world are not anomalies or mistakes, but reflections of the limited awareness of the forces that crafted it. Some scholars argue that this perspective was deliberately suppressed because it challenged centralized religious authority, emphasizing individual insight over dogmatic obedience. Symbols in Gnostic texts serve as keys to understanding these hidden realities. The act of creation is often depicted as a cascade of emanations, each layer containing fragments of light and shadow. The demiurge, depicted as a guardian or architect, shapes the physical world, but is ignorant of the higher divine fullness, known in Gnostic terms as the pleroma. The archons, or cosmic rulers, oversee the material sphere, sometimes obstructing the human pursuit of spiritual awakening. Hans Jonas highlighted that these symbolic depictions were never intended as literal history, but as metaphors for understanding the relationship between human consciousness, the material world, and the divine source. By interpreting these symbols, we begin to see that what was presented as a simple creation story is actually a layered map of spiritual reality, offering guidance to those willing to question and seek beyond the surface. Historical evidence also supports the idea that orthodox institutions actively shaped the story of creation to maintain control. Many Gnostic texts were hidden, burned, or condemned as heretical, while the narratives that emphasized obedience, simplicity, and authority were widely disseminated. By suppressing alternative accounts, religious authorities could guide belief and behavior in ways that minimized human autonomy and understanding. The creation story we were taught was carefully framed to emphasize a single, unquestionable source of divine authority, obscuring the more complex, multi-layered reality that Gnostics recognized. This distortion is crucial to understanding why the deeper truths about creation have remained hidden for centuries, and why thinkers like Hans Jonas saw it as essential to reclaim these insights for modern spiritual seekers. Understanding the demiurge and its role in creation transforms our perspective. Gnostics did not reject the material world outright, but recognized that it is shaped by forces that are not fully conscious of the divine. By becoming aware of these forces, by studying the texts, symbols, and teachings that were preserved despite suppression, humans can begin to navigate the world with insight, understanding that the universe is not simply given to us, but constructed in ways that reflect both limitation and opportunity. This insight empowers us to perceive creation as a dynamic, interactive process where knowledge and awareness become tools to reclaim the spiritual autonomy that has been obscured for millennia. As you reflect on this, ask yourself, how does it change the way you see the world to think that creation was shaped by beings unaware of the full divine reality? How might this awareness shift your understanding of your own place in the cosmos and the way you approach spiritual knowledge? The answers lie not in blind faith, but in curiosity, reflection, and the pursuit of hidden wisdom that Hans Jonas and the Gnostics dedicated their lives to uncovering. For centuries, the true complexity of creation was obscured by religious institutions that sought to centralize authority and simplify spiritual knowledge for the masses. By presenting a single linear creation story, the dominant powers effectively erased alternative teachings that revealed the multi-layered cosmos described by the Gnostics. Hans Jonas argued that this distortion was not accidental. It was a structural control of knowledge, designed to limit human awareness and make spiritual understanding dependent on external authority rather than personal insight. The Gnostics recognized the danger of such simplification. They knew that by obscuring the role of the demiurge and the archons, the orthodox narrative kept humans confined to a narrow perception of reality, blind to the hidden forces shaping the material world. This is the turning point, the realization that the story we were taught was not neutral, but a carefully curated version, stripping away the dimensions of truth that awaken consciousness. Historical evidence reinforces this perspective. Texts discovered at Nag Hammadi and other archaeological sites reveal that early Gnostic communities were aware of multiple levels of reality and the presence of intermediary beings that influenced the material realm. These communities practiced rituals and meditations to access higher knowledge, consciously bypassing the influence of the demiurge and the archons. By doing so, they sought to restore the connection between the human spark and the ultimate divine source. Some scholars believe that the suppression of these texts by orthodox authorities was a deliberate attempt to maintain control over spiritual access, ensuring that only a sanctioned narrative was allowed to shape belief. The distortion, therefore, was not merely in what was told, but in what was hidden, buried, and forbidden from view. Symbols and metaphors in these Gnostic texts provide insight into the nature of the distortion. Creation is depicted as a layered process, with the demiurge and the archons occupying roles that influence the material world, without full comprehension of the higher divine. Humans, in this view, inhabit a realm shaped by forces that are neither entirely good nor evil, but limited, imperfect, and sometimes obstructive. By masking these truths, the orthodox narrative removed the tools for discernment and self-realization, leaving humanity to navigate existence, unaware of the unseen dynamics at play. The turning point, as Hans Jonas emphasizes, lies in reclaiming awareness, understanding that the creation story is more than a tale, it is a map of hidden realities, an invitation to awaken consciousness and perceive the forces that have shaped our world. For modern seekers, this revelation has profound implications. It challenges us to question the narratives we accept, to recognize the hidden structures in our beliefs, and to approach spiritual knowledge with discernment. The story we inherited was a fragment, a simplified reflection of a far greater complexity. By uncovering the distortion, we are given the opportunity to see creation in its full depth, to engage consciously with the forces that shape our reality, and to reclaim the inner wisdom that has been buried by centuries of suppression. Ask yourself now, how different would your understanding of existence be if you were aware of these hidden layers and of the forces that shaped the creation you are taught? Could this awareness transform your approach to life, faith, and spiritual inquiry? Even today, the echoes of this hidden truth shape the way we perceive the world and ourselves. The story of creation, simplified and sanitized by centuries of orthodox teaching, continues to influence our understanding of reality, morality, and human purpose. Hans Jonas emphasized that the Gnostic perspective challenges us to awaken to the unseen forces that surround us, and to recognize that our spiritual experiences are filtered through layers of consciousness we rarely perceive. When we accept inherited narratives without questioning them, we risk limiting our own awareness, unknowingly aligning with frameworks that obscure deeper truths. By reclaiming this knowledge, we are invited to re-examine the origins of the universe, not as passive recipients of a story, but as active participants in a complex spiritual landscape where understanding the hidden forces allows us to navigate life with clarity and insight. The implications of this revelation extend to personal faith, spiritual practice, and even daily decision-making. Consider how your perception of morality, success, or fulfillment might change when you understand that the material world is shaped by beings with limited awareness, rather than a flawless, omnipotent hand. Gnostic texts describe a cosmos in which human consciousness plays a crucial role in bridging the material and divine realms. By cultivating awareness and discernment, we align ourselves with the higher divine source, rather than the incomplete or distorted structures imposed by the demiurge and the archons. This does not diminish the divine. It illuminates a path to greater understanding and empowerment, where knowledge and conscious action transform our relationship with existence itself. Symbols and metaphors embedded in the ancient texts continue to guide seekers who are willing to look beyond conventional interpretations. The creation story, when read through the lens of Gnosticism, is not merely a historical or theological account. It is a framework for understanding hidden realities, a set of instructions for navigating life consciously. Every act, thought, and intention interacts with these layers of reality, and awareness of the hidden structures allows humans to reclaim authority over their spiritual journey. Hans Jonas argued that the ultimate goal of Gnostic insight is not rebellion, but awakening, understanding the cosmos in its full complexity, and recognizing the divine spark within ourselves as a source of liberation. Reflect on your own life. How often have you accepted teachings without questioning them, assuming that what you were told was complete and absolute? Now imagine the possibilities if you approached every belief, every tradition, with awareness of the hidden forces at play. How might this change the way you pray, the way you pursue knowledge, or the way you navigate moral and spiritual decisions? By integrating these revelations into our understanding, we begin to see creation as an interactive process, one that requires discernment, conscious attention, and the courage to seek beyond inherited narratives. The key message is clear. What you are told about creation is only part of the story. The hidden truths, once suppressed, offer a map to deeper awareness and spiritual empowerment. By recognizing the distortion, understanding the layers of hidden forces, and reclaiming conscious participation in the unfolding of life, you step into a reality where knowledge is liberation. Ask yourself, are you ready to see beyond the surface, to embrace the hidden dimensions of existence, and to reclaim the wisdom that centuries of suppression have tried to conceal? This awareness is the bridge between ancient knowledge and personal transformation, and it begins with the willingness to question, explore, and awaken. The most profound insight that Hans Jonas and the Gnostics reveal is that creation is not a single, unified act of divine perfection, but a layered process in which the material world is shaped by entities who are unaware of the fullness of the divine. The demiurge, often depicted as a subordinate creator, structures the physical universe according to limited understanding, while the higher, unknowable God exists beyond perception, encompassing infinite light and consciousness. This framework explains why imperfection, suffering, and limitations exist in the world. They are reflections of the demiurge's constrained perspective. Unlike traditional teachings that portray creation as flawless, Gnostic thought exposes the tension between the material and the spiritual, urging humans to recognize the hidden architects and reclaim their inner spark of gnosis. Symbols in Gnostic texts clarify this hidden architecture. Creation is described as a cascade of emanations, a flow from the highest divine source down through layers of spiritual intermediaries, each with partial awareness, until reaching the material realm. The archons, rulers within this system, oversee and regulate aspects of existence, sometimes obstructing human access to knowledge of the divine. Hans Jonas emphasized that understanding these layers is not meant to instill fear, but to awaken consciousness. By recognizing the hidden forces and their limitations, humans can navigate reality with insight, reclaiming authority over their spiritual journey and aligning with the divine spark within themselves, rather than the imperfect structures surrounding them. This revelation transforms the way we perceive our own existence. Human life is not merely a product of arbitrary chance or predetermined destiny. It is a field in which conscious awareness can pierce the veil of limited perception. The Gnostics taught that by cultivating knowledge, discernment, and reflective understanding, we can bypass the influences of the demiurge and the archons, accessing the divine spark directly. Our thoughts, intentions, and actions gain power when informed by awareness of these hidden layers, turning what seemed like ordinary life into an arena of spiritual awakening. The creation story, once understood through this lens, becomes a guide rather than a doctrine, revealing the dynamics of power, consciousness, and liberation at the foundation of existence. Consider how this applies to your own understanding of the world. How often have you felt that life's structure, its limits, injustices, or challenges, was dictated by forces beyond your control? Gnostic teachings suggest that these forces are real, but they are not omnipotent. They operate within constraints, and human awareness can navigate, circumvent, and even transcend them. Hans Jonas pointed out that the ultimate goal of creation, from the Gnostic perspective, is the awakening of human consciousness. By reclaiming the hidden knowledge and recognizing the demiurge's role, we take an active part in shaping our understanding, perception, and even spiritual destiny. Finally, this insight is not merely theoretical. It invites practical reflection and personal transformation. Every thought, action, and intention interacts with the layered reality of creation. The Gnostics saw humans as participants in an ongoing process, capable of accessing hidden truths, bypassing distorted narratives, and reconnecting with the divine fullness. By understanding the demiurge and the hidden structures of creation, we are no longer passive observers. We become conscious navigators of existence, capable of perceiving the world's deeper truths and reclaiming the wisdom that has been obscured for centuries. Ask yourself, are you ready to see beyond the simplified story, to explore the hidden forces that shape life, and to awaken the divine spark within? The path of knowledge begins with curiosity, courage, and the willingness to look beyond what you were told. Now that you've seen the layers behind the creation story, it becomes clear that what we were taught is only a fraction of the truth. Hans Jonas and the Gnostics reveal a cosmos shaped not by a single flawless act, but by multiple forces, some aware, some limited, some hidden from our perception. The demiurge, the archons, and the layered emanations of the divine suggest a reality far more complex than the simplified narratives we inherited. Understanding this does not distance us from the divine. It empowers us. By recognizing these hidden forces, we reclaim awareness and agency, learning to navigate the material world while aligning our consciousness with the higher divine source. Creation is no longer a passive story. It is an invitation to awaken, to question, and to discover truths long suppressed. Reflect on your own beliefs and spiritual practices. Have you accepted narratives without questioning their origins? Or have you actively sought understanding beyond what was taught? The Gnostic perspective challenges us to engage consciously, to see the hidden structures of reality, and to align our intentions with the divine spark within. By doing so, we transcend mere repetition of inherited stories and participate in a dynamic spiritual reality. Each insight we gain, each layer of awareness we uncover, strengthens our capacity to perceive truth and reclaim spiritual sovereignty that centuries of suppression tried to obscure. If this revelation has resonated with you, take a moment to engage actively. Comment below with your own reflections on the creation story or a personal insight you've discovered while watching. Share your thoughts, your questions, or your revelations, and join a community of seekers dedicated to uncovering hidden truths. By participating, you help preserve the wisdom that has been buried for centuries and contribute to a collective awakening of understanding. Each interaction becomes part of the living record of knowledge, a step toward greater clarity and shared insight. Remember, creation is more than a story. It is a map of hidden realities, an intricate web of forces that shape our existence. By learning from the Gnostics, Jonas, and ancient texts, we gain the tools to navigate these unseen layers consciously, to align with higher truths, and to awaken the divine spark within. Ask yourself, how will you approach the story of creation from now on? What truths are waiting for you beyond the simplified narrative you were taught? And most importantly, are you willing to continue seeking, questioning, and uncovering the hidden knowledge that shapes the world around you? The journey does not end here. Each question, each reflection, each conscious step draws you closer to understanding the full tapestry of existence.